Jay, why were you destined to become your own boss?
Quite frankly, I am not a good employee. I am just not good working for people. I never have been. I've always had a little bit of a problem with authority, a little bit of a problem with being told what to do when I don't understand the reasons for it, or if I see a different way to do it, and especially in like the creative realm, because I did my first probably 10 years working for other people, either as an editor or a director or, whatever it was. And I always had issues. Like if I saw a different way to do it and I couldn't do it because the boss didn't want it that way. So I always wanted to be my own boss, like from the get.
But, we hear this thing that film is a collaborative medium. I think everybody's probably said that in an interview. So at some point, though, somebody has to answer to somebody. Yeah, you can never really truly be your own person or free. You're always answering to somebody.
Yeah.
So how do you reconcile that if you have a production and you're just going to be collaborating with other people?
Well, what I find, like in my collaborations, I am usually hiring. So I'm usually the one at the top, and I find with collaborations, especially on low budget stuff, it's a matter of, letting people have, their own creative freedom to express themselves and do their thing within, some confines, of course. But I like with, composers, for example, usually for the first draft, I let them go hog wild. Like, what do you want to do? And, then I'll make adjustments if we need to. But, as far as business partner collaborations, I don't really do those anymore. So I have my own production company, Zapruder Flicks. So I do that. I own it. I operate it. I fund it now from the money that I've made from movies, the money I continue to make. So I pretty much don't have a benefactor anymore. Occasionally, I'm getting ready to do a bigger project next year, a bigger feature, and that will be for other producers. But they are pretty good, at least creatively, being hands off. So I think that will go pretty well.
So this production company that you have now, is this your first one, or did you have ones prior?
Yeah, I've had several.
Oh, you've had several, okay.
Yeah. I started, my very first production company was just called, I think it was Zapruder Pictures. And those whole Zapruder thing is Abram Zapruder, who shot the Zapruder film. And a friend of mine in college, it was his idea. And, that was our production company. And I did that for years. And about maybe 4 years ago, I switched over to Zapruder Flicks, which is just me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Or J Flicks.
Yeah. And I have a couple, not incorporated, nom de plumes, on YouTube now. It's J Horton Films, but that's not necessarily an official, LLC. It's just a title I use sometimes.
What were the first steps you took to form your production company?
Well, I went to legal. I've done a lot of LLCs, so I went to LegalZoom. I set up the LLC through them. I do have an entertainment attorney, but I try to do as much as I can myself, and then let him look over the final things. So he's spending less time, costing me less money. And I kind of take the same tact for cast and crew contracts and everything. I try to do drafts myself, and then see, have him look at it, is this okay? And if it comes to distribution, of course, I let him look at those contracts.
If you had to start over from scratch, how would you begin to build your production company?
That's a good question. If I had to start all over, I don't, it's hard to say. Without the knowledge I have, it'd be a different story. Knowing what I know now, I think I would pretty much do what I'm doing now. So my story of Zapruder Flicks, so I was doing narrative features for many years. And I made a transition in 2019. I was doing some filmmaking videos on YouTube, and somebody had suggested documentary filmmaking, so I kind of started moving into that. And when I do documentaries, it's a whole, different level of documentary. I'm doing, very low budget, usually, except for my time and, effort, there are no budgets. But, I started doing those and realized that I could kind of be a self-contained unit with this. So I spent about a year just busting these things out one after another. And then as they started earning money, I built a floor. So after I think maybe 2 years of doing that, I had enough of a floor, enough of a passive income coming in that I could kind of move back and start doing narratives again. So I would take the money from that, or mix it with crowdfunding, and I'll do a narrative once every year and a half, and then supplement with, now I do about 6 documentaries a year, whereas back then I was doing like 12. But I would try to do, whether it's documentaries or narrative films, I would do stuff as cheaply as humanly possible, and as self-contained as possible, as much ownership as possible, and, get the passive income going so that I can have some cushion to do bigger projects. So that's probably the approach I would take if I was to start all over.
How important is a business plan when starting a production company?
I think it's really important to know where you're going and understand that you need to keep your budget absolutely as low as possible, because the money that you're going to make from almost any kind of film these days can be very little, it can be a lot, but in averages it's much lower. So I think it's important to understand that and know how to build that. I don't know if I would say I have like a quote unquote say business plan, other than keep my budgets low, make a profit off them, make more of them, and do bigger projects.
So you didn't do an official business plan when you started
No.
the previous production
No,
companies?
I kind of have fell into learning how to do my own business. I didn't go to business school. I went to college, but I was an arts major. So I've never had really a business mind. But, when I started doing the documentaries and getting more into the marketing and the business side of it on the back end, I actually found I had an affinity for it. And I'm pretty good at that stuff, but I never looked at it as, this is my 4-year plan for this or anything like that.
Where does your frugality come from?
Probably from upbringing. I was raised frugal. So, I'm from Fort Wayne, Indiana, single mother, low income household. I grew up in a trailer park, and, we never had money. So, it was installed in me from a very young age to be, frugal. And then I learned very quickly, even working for other people, keep the budgets low. And so it translated. And when I saw them doing it, I was like, hey, I want to do this too. And if I'm going to do this and put my own money in, and it's a risk to put your own money and time in when you're not sure what your return's going to be. That's one of the scariest things about being an independent filmmaker is you go into these endeavors and, there's no guarantee that any movie you make is going to make money. So it is a risk. It's definitely, filmmaking is definitely not for the risk averse. And you learn how to feed crews, and food is so important, so you have to feed them well, but you also need to feed them cheap, and you need to how can I get the most bang for this buck? We just did a big feature in Ohio, and we had the woman that owned the location, and she was really, really into it, and so she helped us cook. So we gave her a siphon, and bought the things, gave her a little salary, but it was much cheaper than say like a catering company here in LA, and we got really nice home cooked meals. And you can do that yourself, wherever you are. If maybe not you personally, but you find somebody, a friend or, family member or somebody like that, and, then give them a little bit of money, pay for the ingredients, and, just have it go, and you can keep it cheap.
Great, yeah, and I'm sure the food's cheaper in Ohio than it is here in LA.
I think in general it was, yes.
I think everything is cheaper somewhere else.
Yeah.
Okay, this is excellent. How many people work for your production company?
So for my production company, I have, and I wouldn't necessarily call them employees, but I have 1, 2, 3, 4, probably half a dozen people that work with me or for, I hate to say for me. I know I say I'm the boss and I'm the top, but at the same time, it is kind of, it's a collaboration. So I have a DP director that I met about 4 years ago when I first started doing docs. And he had a strong interest in cannabis and what was the other, dog rescue. And so sometimes what we would start doing is I would let him set up the interviews, and then I kind of, trained him on, how to shoot the interviews. And it got to a point now where I live in Georgia, he still lives out here, and he wrangles interviews and he shoots them. And then, instead of, doing an upfront salary with it, we have a rev split situation, and he gets so much, profit from the movies. And, over these years, it's become really hefty. And then I have a couple other people that I work with like that. And then I have maybe 3 or 4 people that I'll have do some post stuff, and that's usually pay for the gig.
What have been some of the biggest challenges as an independent filmmaker having a production company, and how have you overcome them?
I mean, the biggest problem with having your own production company, it's just you're responsible for absolutely everything. The legalities of it. You have to stay in compliance. So, like with a lot of LLCs, you do an LLC for a single project, which I usually do. And, after it runs its initial license, like my lawyer said, you can kind of let it lapse, because like you've kind of passed to the point where you're going to have legal action against it or anything like that. So 4 or 5 years, they can kind of go. But for your main company, like Flix, which I consistently run, and it's been going for, I guess, 4 or 5 years now, I have to constantly, I have to make sure every year that I'm in compliance, that my taxes are paid. Taxes are a big thing owning your own business. I used to do my own, and I was doing them kind of poorly. So, it got to a point, and I'm frugal, I don't want to pay for it if I could do it. But I finally, bit the bullet and, got a Hollywood accountant, and, they do my taxes now. And it is an expense, and it's an expense I don't like to pay, but I think it's smart too. So there's that. And finding people to work for you for, a reasonable rate. Like, I don't believe in not paying people or not doing, an equitable split or something that works for everyone. But when you're making stuff for nothing, that can be really hard. And especially if you're putting the money into it yourself. It just becomes a little more of a risk. So you have to manage that. So it's personalities in the business, and the changes in the business, and the changes in how the taxes work, and mostly that.
What's one mistake you learned the hard way that now you make sure that never happens again?
I mean, business-wise, I can't think of a big one that I did, with the exception of not doing my own taxes. So I did end up owing, I forget what the amount was, but it was several $1,000s from previous years, because I had just not done my taxes correctly. So when I got the accountant, that caught up to me a little bit. And I didn't get in trouble, no audits or nothing, but it could have been. And then other than that, it's mostly personality wrangling, because you are in, for no better term, you're a boss, and you have to be able to, work with people and make sure that they're getting what they need out of it, you're getting what you need out of it. And communication is I think that's, whether it's making movies or running a business, is the biggest thing. Especially when you're doing low budget stuff, you have to be really upfront. This is what this pays, this is what this entails, and this is what I expect. And, if it's a rev split situation, that can be a little tricky, because you're okay, this is your rev split, and you're definitely going to get this percent, but what is that money actually going to be? It can differ movie to movie. I have movies that honestly they make $4 or $5 a month, and then I have others that make $10,000 a month. So, the person that's working on that $5 one, they can be like, well, this can't be right, and you have to share, numbers and stuff like that, and stay communicative so that they understand. And I try to let, filmmakers know from the front if you're doing a rev split situation, or if you're doing deferments, which I typically don't do. But if I do, you have to have that conversation. I did this movie called A Hard Place back in February, and I had a couple of my producers that were working on it, and our budget was tight. So I was like, look, I really want your guys' help, but if you're going to be on this as producers, it's going to have to be a deferred situation, and this is the risk. You may never see this money. It might not come in. If it does, you'll definitely get it. And my last 3 movies, it came in, so most likely you will, but you might not. And you have to be upfront about that, like totally clear. So I've worked with, producers in the past where, oh yeah, man, we're gonna pay you this, smaller amount up front, and then you're gonna get a deferment. Your deferment's gonna be like this, and the movie never makes money, you never get the deferment, and then, you have bad feelings about it. So I think communication is huge.
What are your final thoughts to anyone thinking about starting a production company?
So my main advice to someone who's going to, run their own filmmaking business, they're going to start their own production company, understand the upfront costs, and they're not, to start an LLC is not very expensive. Depending on your state, it can be as little as a few $100s. I think when I started one last time in California, I think it was $800, right. and then I don't remember what the yearly fee was, but it might have been $800. But understand that, and understand, if you're going to run this business for a length of time, that is an ongoing thing. And that's why, especially if you have an individual, project with your LLC, over time, the movie might not earn that much money and you're still putting in that money. So understand that. Understand that you're responsible for things. An LLC shields you from, any kind of, inadvertent, illegal thing, maybe you didn't do your taxes right or something like that, but it doesn't totally protect you. So you have to be aware of the ins and outs of it. I think starting out, you don't necessarily have to have an accountant if you're talking small enough numbers, but once you start getting in around the 6-figure range, I think you absolutely need to have an accountant, whether it's just for, a single project or it's, multiple projects. But all in all, I don't think it needs to be a big intimidating thing. Setting up an LLC is something anybody can do. LegalZoom is very helpful, and when you have questions, you ask them, they'll answer it. It's not hard, So I think people just need to understand that it's not as insurmountable a task as it might seem.
So you've raised over $214,000 or so via crowdfunding.
Yeah.
What is it about you where people just want to give you money, Jay?
People love me. I mean, I know it's I joke, but I'm also kind of serious. So I think one of the major things that set me up for crowdfunding success was doing my filmmaking channel. I'm not saying it's not necessarily directly all the, filmmakers came in and gave all that money, because that's not what it was. But it on one hand, it really gave me the confidence to do a crowdfunder. I'm much better on camera now. It's when I started doing that, it was very kind of awkward and quiet, and I had no interest in being in front of the camera. And through doing that channel, it gave me confidence. I could speak well. I think my pitch videos for both my projects were really good, and they featured me pretty heavily. And I do think, at least initially, for the first crowdfunder, which was Craving, I think a lot of the initial donations did come in from filmmakers. And crowdfunders, it's a lot like a movie success. A lot of it is dependent on early momentum. And if you can get early momentum going, you can really get something up there. I think they say on most crowdfunders, if you don't raise 30% in the first couple of days, you're dead in the water. On both Craving and A Hard Place, I think I was well over 50% on day one. So that helped. And then another aspect of it is I'm very approachable, and especially online, if somebody comments even just a little hey, it looks cool, thank you very much, and I'm genuine, and I respond to them. And I spend time, every single person that donates, I send a thank you, even if it's just one of the dollar donations. I'm very, at least as many as I can. It gets overwhelming sometimes, but I try to respond to everyone in a genuine manner. And what the really cool thing about crowdfunding that I honestly didn't anticipate or expect, you build friendships out of it. I've made lifelong friends from people that have donated to my movies or been a part of them. And that was just great. And the other thing is, for both my projects, and again, not to sound like an egomaniac, but they were exciting projects. They were projects that people wanted to be a part of. This sounds cool. I want to be a part of this, or, I want to do a producer credit, or I want to act in it for a minute, or have a cameo, and or I just want to support it. I want a Blu-ray. And also one of the other tricks for crowdfunding is, and it goes contrary to some people's, beliefs, because a lot of people think, it's kind of an underdog thing, and people want to support the underdog, and they want to, give to the struggling artists. People want to be a part of things that look like they're going to happen. People want to be a part of the winning team, and that is what it is. If you have an exciting project, and I have a track record of finishing projects, before I ever did a crowdfunder, I made almost 20 movies, and I've never not finished a movie. So that in and of itself is a huge plus, because there's so many crowdfunders that they never get made. They take the money and run. They don't fulfill their perks, or whatever it is. So I think those things gave me a huge leg up in it. And it's one of the same reasons that I've had success in marketing and distributing my films over the last 4 years. I know a lot of filmmakers find self-promotion like a dirty word. They don't want to do it. I've grown to enjoy it, and I'm good at it. And the crowdfunding was a big part of that.
And you do it in a way that just watching your channel and also getting feedback from other filmmakers, it's where you want to sort of listen to what you have to say, and you feel like, okay, this guy's being transparent and he's just sort of just telling it like it is. And so it's enjoyable to listen to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And another big component of crowdfunding is and I think the same thing can be said for just putting out a movie. Your audience or your supporters, however you want to look at it, they need to get something out of it. And that can be as simple as entertainment, but it can be education. Another thing I do when I'm running a crowdfunder is, I do, not every day usually the campaign, but every other, once every 3, I do little live streams and tell people how it's going, and I talk about what I'm doing. I'm not sitting here secretively, this is the secret sauce and I'm not going to tell anyone. I talk to people about the stuff I do. One major component, if you're going to run a successful crowdfunder and raise, 5 or 6 figures, one of the things is upsells. And, that sounds very, salesy and, marketing and I might get you in there and sell you something else. And it sounds, I don't want to say shifty, but it's, it doesn't sound like, artist stuff. So filmmakers have a aversion to that. But, you get somebody, I do sell producer credits, and I don't have a problem with it. I usually save my chief producer credits for the people that are actually creatively making the movie, but I'll sell associate producers or co-producers. So I will bring in, I'll sell a associate producer credit for $350. Right, and then I have a $1,000 co-producer credit that has different perks with it. But if I get someone that gets that associate producer credit for $350, I'll contact them, and I'm very genuine. I establish a dialogue first, and thank you so much. And we'll have maybe 1 or 2 back and forth emails or messages on Facebook, and then I'll hit that person up and I'll be like, hey, we're doing something kind of wild. We're doing an upgrade, you can, for another $350, you can get this $1,000 credit, and that sounds very used car salesman, but it's sales, and it works. A good 30-40% of what we raised is from upsales, so that is part of a crowdfunder. So whenever I talk to a filmmaker, hey, I'm going to do a crowdfunder, I talk about things like that, and I'd be like, look, if you are not comfortable with upselling people, or you're not comfortable with doing producer credits or cameo acting credits, or whatever it is, you don't have to necessarily do all 3, but you have to do something. Because the thing that I found about crowdfunders, people have this misconception that people are just going to want to just support their project. They're just going to, your project looks great, I love you, I'm just going to support it. And it's just not the case. There are some people that do that, but for most of us, that's just not the case. The people have to be getting something tangible out of it. And there are people that, an associate producer credit, whether they're trying to build a career or not, that's an exciting thing for them. Or, the acting credit things, which I know can be controversial. I don't mind doing little, small roles for crowdfunding. And, a lot of these people, especially in the horror movie realm, they're convention heads. So they go out to these horror conventions and they spend, $500,000 or $1,000 or, thousands of dollars to go to the convention and take pictures with, these actors. And then you put some of these actors in your movie, and for that same amount of money, they come and they can actually be in a scene with that actor. And that's exciting. And if you work it in a certain way, it doesn't have to hurt the movie, because a lot of filmmakers, they're worried, they're going to come in, they're not really actors, they're going to hurt the movie. You have to tailor those things, those roles for non-actors, or for inexperienced actors, and sometimes, I've had some of them that actually turned out to be really good actors. I did A Hard Place, and we had maybe 16 of them. And it was these, some of the characters in that were, farmhands. And, I cast a bunch of them, and I expanded some of those roles because they were so fun and they were so good. And the other thing I do, if somebody's going to get an acting role in a movie, and I always am clear with them, this is an audition, you paid the money, you got the thing. But can you do me a favor and put, something on camera for me? I'll give them some sides or something to read. I figure out what their, ability is, what might fit them better. And then I assign the roles based on that. And I've personally had good luck with it. And if you're going to do something like that, you realize that a crowdfunding movie is different from making a regular movie, from making, your own, I don't know, passion project. There are certain things you have to roll with, and that's one of them. And it's something that I like it. I mean, I think Craving and A Hard Place are the best two movies I've ever made, and they're crowdfunding movies.
And those are narrative films, not your documentaries.
Yes, yeah. So I, from doing the docs, at a certain point, because my goal was always to make narrative films. And I like doing the docs a lot, and I was really burned out on narratives I had a failure called Campus, really bad experience. I think we talked about that last time. And I wasn't going to make narratives anymore. But after about 2, maybe 3 years of doing the docs, I started getting the itch. And to be perfectly honest, it wasn't just creative. Some of it was ego. I did miss the attention that comes with it as a narrative director. Because doing the docs, I'm starting to do more on camera with them, but initially, I'm not front and center. And I wasn't even taking directing credit on most of those. I would produce and edit them, and I would give my, Jeremy Nori, he does a lot of shooting for me. And he slowly actually did transition into a real director on them, but initially he was just shooting them, and I just was giving him the credits because I didn't necessarily want them. But I got to a point where I missed that attention, and I missed I love documentaries, but there's something really, really special about collaborating with an actor and a DP together on set, and creating something that you wrote from the ground up. There's something really exciting about that, and I just really missed it. But in my past, I had directed a ton of narratives, and I used to do them really fast, 5-day shoots sometimes less, $50,000 budgets down to 10 or 5, and now, I don't want to make movies like that anymore. I don't want to do it quite that fast. But it's more about money, and not necessarily money in my pocket. It's about being able to compensate a crew fairly and at a livable wage. I'm not going to make, because I don't care what anyone says, you can't make a $10,000 movie and pay a proper crew proper wages. You can't. It is impossible. It's either going to be favors or you're going to have a smaller crew. If you want a full crew, script supervisor, AD, everything, sound guy, the right kind of camera crew, an operator, AC, a swing. If you want all these things and you're paying them a legal wage, and have enough time to shoot a 90-minute feature, you can't do that in 5 days, or on $10,000. At least I can't. If people can do it, or their states they can do it, more power to them. I can't, and I want to be a little more comfortable on set as far as how much time I have, and the scale of the movies. I'm this also might sound a little egocentric, but I don't have any desire anymore to do 3 characters in a room, drama or thriller features anymore that have, just like single location, or, I want to go to multiple locations and I want to have a bunch of people, and I want it to have a scale. And I like working in horror and action horror. So I want action, and that requires stunts, and, it requires special effects. And, I kind of, with Craving, it was the first one, and I was like, okay, I'm not going to do another movie that's, under $100,000. So I raised 70, close to 80 in crowdfunding for Craving, and then I did another maybe 15 myself, and then we raised another like 10 or so traditionally. And then A Hard Place, we raised 128 through crowdfunding, 120 through the initial campaign, and then another 8 through a finishing funds campaign, and then raised another 30 on that. And to be quite frank, that wasn't enough money. That was a tough shoot. So I just don't want the next one I'm doing is triple that budget. I'm not saying they'll all be there, but at least at $100,000, I'm not going to do any cheaper than that anymore. And I'm not going to do them multiple times a year like I used to. Now it's tops. I could see doing 2 maybe, but I try to do 1 every year and a half.
And with crowdfunding, did you take a class?
I did take a crowdfunding class. So back in 2017 or 16, I can't remember when we decided to do the movie, I was going to do the campus. And there was a period where I was considering crowdfunding it. And there was a guy named Justin Giddings, the Kickstarter guy.
Yeah.
Still around. And he was doing a really thorough crowdfunding class. And I think it was around $2,000 at the time. And I had just met kind of an angel investor for a different company, Gas Money Pictures, that I was running with another guy. And he put a lot of money into that, into gear and stuff like that. It was an animation thing to get it started. And I asked him if he would, front the $2,000 for this class. So he did, and I took the class. One of the best things I've ever done in my life. Because crowdfunding at its core is marketing. You are trying to get people to go to a place and, take a monetary action. It's really not any different to get someone to go to a crowdfunding page and buy a perk than it is to try to get somebody to Amazon to rent a movie. So he step by step basically tells you how to get somebody to go to this place and do a thing. So he would talk about social media posts and how you word the social media posts and how you interact with people. And it was this, it was video after video. I think it was 4 or 5 hours worth of material. And to this day, that is kind of the base of my own marketing thing. I've done 30, 40 minute, marketing videos on my channel that are probably about 20-25% directly from that. And that is honestly where my entrepreneurial spirit was born. You can do this thing, and Justin's very affable, and he was good at it. If you actually follow and execute on what he's saying, it can be very effective, and it opened up the world to me.
Where does a crowdfunding campaign begin for you?
So it begins with an idea, but like I said, a crowdfunding movie, in my opinion, for me, it needs to be a specific kind of movie. And we'll talk about genre in a minute, but we'll forget about genre for a second. And it needs to be you have to have enough roles to do some supporting roles or some cameo roles for people. It needs to be something that is going to be exciting to a group of people that you have access to. So for me, a lot of the people that I talk with are either filmmakers or they're horror people. Not that I've just done exclusively horror, but I have a pretty strong footprint in horror. So for me, it had to be a horror movie, and filmmakers were part of my core audience, which most people will tell you, and they're not wrong, filmmakers are not a crowdfunding audience. Don't market to filmmakers. So just because I'm saying I did it, guys, don't go out there and market to filmmakers, because unless you have something of value to give them.
Okay, why? Sorry to interrupt.
Because filmmakers are doing their own thing. I'm not saying we're all selfish, but none of us are, most of us anyway, are not rich. We're not super wealthy. We have enough money to invest in our projects, but we're concentrating on our stuff. We're trying to get money, scrambling, hustling for ours. We can't give to yours anything that's going to be meaningful, beyond a few dollars, So, but that said, like, I have a really strong, background in marketing and distribution. So, like, one of the things I did on A Hard Place, the second one, because I'd raised, the 80 for Craving, I offered a crowdfunding masterclass. So, and that was, I forget what we charged for it, like $2.99 or something, but I sold a lot of them, and basically I sat down and I did a video, just like videos on my YouTube channel, because I put specifically for that. And I did have a crowdfunding consultant on both Craving and A Hard Place. And he has raised over a few $1,000,000 collectively on his projects. So he did half of it and I did half. I think he did about 45 minutes on it, or maybe an hour. And then I did an hour on crowdfunding, and I did an hour on marketing distribution. And filmmakers get this. And also then the producer credits come in really strongly, that with filmmakers, because there's people out there that they're getting started. They want those credits. They want to be a part of it. They want to build some credits. So you can get some associate or co-producers from that.
What was his name?
Abel Berry.
Okay.
Abel Berry. He is a fantastic crowdfunding consultant. I owe a lot of the success to him. He helped me. He helped me craft the campaigns. Taught me a lot of the little, like the upsales thing. I learned from him. And he's a very good, honest guy, and he takes a very reasonable, amount. You can do. I don't know exactly what his upfront thing is, because I did a back end, but he takes a little back end fee for it, and gives really valuable advice. But it's just like anything. It's all about execution. People can give you the best advice in the world, but if you're not executing or you're refusing to do it, like one of his biggest frustrations is, he'll tell filmmakers, hey, you got to do this, this, and this, and they're like, yeah, I don't want to do that, and they're not gonna succeed, So.
Or is it like appearing on camera, or what?
Yeah,
what's
whether it's that, or it's I'm not gonna go to someone that just gave me $50 and ask them for another $50. And like, I do understand that mindset, but the thing that like filmmakers need to wrap their heads around with crowdfunding is, like, most of the people that give substantial amounts, like past the $100, like when you're talking into 500 or thousands, these are people that are not usually broke. These are people with disposable income, and they're doing stuff like this in lieu of their vacation, or whatever it is, but they have it. Like, people, it's not other filmmakers, and it's not other broke people like that are substantially donating to them. So like, it's not wrong or bad to do that, and you're giving them the choice. You're like, hey, you can do this, you're not. And I always word my things like, hey, if you're not into this, if you don't want to do it, you can't swing it, no problem. But a lot of filmmakers don't want to do that. A lot of filmmakers want to draw a line in the sand and claim artistic integrity and not do the producer credits, and that's fine. I understand that too. There's a lot of producers out there that feel it cheapens the job, and that's a valid point. I wouldn't argue that. But for me, I don't necessarily agree. I don't think we live in a world of black and white morality like that. And for me, it's not wrong. And I will continue to do it regardless of what someone else might say. And I feel the same way about the acting credits.
Has anyone challenged you on that?
Oh yeah, definitely. There's a contingent of people out there, whether it be actors or filmmakers, that get very vocal and angry, and they'll follow you. They'll comment on posts, and they'll try to put posts on your crowdfunding campaign. And usually, what I found, and whether it's crowdfunding or anything else, I find usually when you're getting hate, either from anyone in the business, whether it's actors or other filmmakers, it has to do with some amount of jealousy. Like, you're doing this thing, or I wanted this thing, I want to audition for you, but I can't audition for you because you're selling all your roles. And I always tell people, like, I'm not selling all my roles. I have a few specific roles that I put aside for this. And if it wasn't for that, these roles wouldn't exist. Like, you're not, no one's taking your job. It wasn't going to be a job, you know, and if those roles don't get taken, I take them out. You know, like, they're not there. I'm not hiring anyone for those. They're made specifically for the crowdfunder. You know, so I personally don't have an issue with it, but there is a lot of, you know, and you know, like, especially with actors, it's a tough game. You know, like, it's a tough game. And when, you know, you perceive that, everybody is, you know, buying their roles and there's nothing for me, you can get angry and you can lash out. And, like, I get it. So, like, I don't get mad about it, but I don't engage with it anymore. I just, you know, delete or block the person and move on.
I mean, Raymond Chandler, back in his day of writing these different stories about, you know, the mean streets of LA, you know, people would buy their way into different government offices in the 30s, and it was something that was done.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, I mean, people have always bought roles. You know, before crowdfunding ever existed, you know, producers were bringing in their girlfriends, or, you know what I mean? And they're basically, you know, like, buying or people would straight out say, hey, here's $30,000, an investor. I am putting, you know, $1 million into this, and this is my girlfriend. And, you know, maybe it's not one-to-one buying the role, but they're buying the role. That person has inherited that role and is not, you know, being compensated, you know, for the role, or maybe they are, but, you know, I mean, there's not a lot of difference. And it's producer credits, same thing. You know, they used to make the joke that, you know, we give out associate producer credits instead of raises to secretaries, you know, so.
How much time do you spend planning out the campaign before you launch it?
Okay, so planning a crowdfunder is not a simple thing. A successful crowdfunder. So they're in crowdfunding, just like movies. You know, there's different levels of them. And if you're making a backyard movie for $2,000, there can be a less amount of planning. If you're doing a crowdfunder for $1,000 or $500 or, you know, whatever it is, under 10, maybe you can get away and not do so much planning. If you're trying to do crowdfunders on the level that I am, you know, $50,000 to 100 or over, it takes planning. So I typically spend about 90 days, like, setting up a campaign. So, like, I'll decide what the project is, you know, scripts written, all that. I'm not counting that in that time. And then, okay, I'm going to crowdfund this. I pick the date, I'm going to crowdfund it. 90 days, you know, maybe a little bit more before that, I start creating materials. So one of the major things that you need to run a successful crowdfunder is you need a lot of material, a lot of things to post. So, like, you'll see a lot of unsuccessful campaigns. They post the same trailer, the same poster, the same text over and over and over and over again, and wonder why they're not getting interaction. They wonder why no one's donating to their campaign. They're not creating anything new. So I start at that 90-day. I start with art. So I'm a fair graphic designer. Sometimes I can create a really nice image. If I can create it myself, I will, for free. If I have to go to a graphic designer, I'll do that. I try to come up with 5, like, hero posters that are high quality, you know, or as high quality as I can get. And then, you know, like, from those, using those elements, I'll create a bunch of other, like, supplementary art. I'll create the thumbnails for the perks, you know, like the art for the pages. You know, I'm going to end up creating a Facebook page for the thing. So, you know, Facebook banner size, stuff like that. And then, even more importantly, I start crafting my social media post. So when the campaign's going, I will post organically as well. That's very important. But when you're in the heat of a campaign, especially if you're in the doldrums of the campaign, so like in a 30-day campaign, you're gonna have a week somewhere in there where you're just not raising hardly anything, and it can be depressing, and you get in these negative mindsets, and it's hard to post. It's hard to write a positive social media post when you're like, nobody giving to my campaign. So it's tough. So what I do way in advance, you know, say my campaign is gonna be 28 days, which is about what I run them now. I make sure that I have at least one post pre-written for every day of that campaign. Like, and I make a little, like, Word document, and I put them in there, and, you know, and I don't try to do it all at once, because if you try to barrel through it, you'll start, you know, you'll get burned out, or you'll get lazy, or the quality of them suffers. So when the inspiration hits, I'll oh, this would be good, and instead of posting it, I'll save it, you know. So then I'll also, you know, I have my pitch video, and Like, I'll come up with a couple of variations of that. Like usually my pitch videos, I try to keep them at 90 seconds to 2 minutes. That's me. There's successful people that do longer, but I like them short. But then I'll do 30-second cut downs of them, 15-second cut downs of them. I'll do vertical video versions of them, and I'll have all of that set up way in advance. And I'll also create memes. So, whatever the popular memes are, I'll start, like just crafting it for the movie, I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but, I'll do a meme and relate it to my movie, one of the babies looking really happy and it'll be like, we have new crowdfunding, new perks today, or, something like that. Free perk Friday, whatever it is. And I'll have a bunch of those. So by the time that campaign rolls around, I have multiple posts I can make every day of that campaign that I do not have to create on the fly, that are just there. So that's what takes the time. And then the other thing that you need to do, and this is another thing like people don't like to hear, but a certain percent of what you raise, it does need to kind of come from like people like people you already know. People like before day one, you should have, like, in my opinion, I've heard different amounts from different people, but I think you should have about 30% of it prompt. 30% of your goal should be pretty much pre-promised. So I go to, and I don't believe in DMing strangers and asking for money, like on Facebook. I don't believe in it. There's people that do it and they do it successfully. I don't like it. I'm not comfortable with that. But I will, like maybe 2 to 3 weeks before the campaign, I will start going out to my friends or people that I'm like comfortable saying, hey, on day one of my campaign, can you put in $5, or whatever it is, because another thing that's really important, like I said, it's momentum. But it's not just the amount of money you raise, it's the number of people that are coming into your campaign. So like on day one, if you can get, 100, 150 backers, even if they're only coming in for small amounts, just that traffic coming to that page is going to put you on Indiegogo's trending page. They're going to push you in the algorithm. You're going to get more people in. It builds momentum. And it's another way, it's kind of a cute little trick. Like say, like on your first day, you're not really raising that much money, but you get a lot of people. So you focus on the positive. So instead of saying, you have a $25,000 goal and you've raised whatever, $4,000, which doesn't sound bad, but it's not super, or we'll say less, we'll say $2,000. Doesn't sound super exciting. But so instead of saying I did $2,000 of 20, you say, we just passed 150 backers, exclamation mark, and it makes it sound exciting, and then you have both things to talk about if you're doing better on the other side too. So like on day one, and it's important, and people think it's bragging, but it's important to jump in there and be like, and celebrate your victories. And man, we just passed 100 backers in the first 2 hours. We just raised $25,000 on our first day, and throw a screenshot of the amount, like the Indiegogo page. We raised, I think on Hard Place, it was like somewhere between 16 and 22,000 on day one. So I'm like, look, we're 50% to our goal. There it is. And that excites people. And I found throughout the campaign, those are good organic posts. Every time you reach a goal stone, even if it's only 1,000 more, hey, we just reached $21,000. We just hit 22, or, whatever it is. But having all those things kind of in advance as much as possible is essential to a good campaign. You need to have a variety of content to post.
So even if you don't want to appear, we've talked about being seen as egotistical or whatever,
yes,
you need to learn how to sort of toot your own horn when it comes to your crowdfunding.
Yes, you do. Yeah, it is something that didn't come easy to me initially, but what I found, if people like you, if people are rooting for you, like they like those posts. Like, yes, there are gonna be haters that are gonna look at that, no, you're this guy, screw him. But you just can't worry about that. You got to worry about, the people that actually care. And it's the same thing for life. You worry about the people that you are affecting positively and they're affecting you positively, and everybody else you just got to let that go. But yeah, they absolutely will. Yeah.
Jay, how come you've chosen Indiegogo over all of the other crowdfunding platforms that are out there?
So initially, I chose Indiegogo because, and I think this has changed now. I think Kickstarter does the same thing now, but back in the day anyway, Indiegogo had an option where you can set your goal, but you can keep what you make. You know, whereas like Kickstarter, it was an all or nothing. And I think that may have changed now. There may be an option on Kickstarter to do the same thing, but at least initially that was what made Indiegogo exciting. Because I'm like, if I set a, you know, $20,000 goal for a movie and I don't quite get there with the crowdfunder, because of experience I have, I know I could find that money traditionally if I have to. I don't necessarily like want to, or, you know, which I'll get to that point in a minute. But so the second reason that I started going with Indiegogo is it has a very like robust and supportive like horror community, and I was crowdfunding horror movies, so I tended to go with that. And Abel, who consulted for me, that was also what he was most familiar with. So that's why I decided it. And then I did the second one with them because I had done the first one with them. And so like I'm pretty much a brand loyal person. So if I have success with a thing, I'm probably going to stay with it. Yeah.
Is Tubi the best free streaming platform in the US?
So I think Tubi, you know, I really feel awkward, you know, telling anyone that like this is the best or, you know, this is the worst. In general terms, yes, Tubi is, for independent filmmakers, right now anyway, the last couple of years, in general terms, it is the best platform to make some money off independent films, especially smaller independent films. Like, absolutely. The AVOD market has just totally exploded. Like, Tubi is awesome. I mean, YouTube's coming up in it. We can talk about that a little later. What's the other one? Freevee is starting to do really well for some people. But Tubi, it's just... It's created its own little ecosystem. You know, they call them Tubi movies now, whether it's a Tubi original or not. You know, and there are Facebook groups that are dedicated to it, and there's a few of them that have 500,000 people or 1 million people, and these posts get interaction like you have. I have never seen like a horror group with I've seen them with that many people, but I've never seen that kind of interaction. Like, it is insane. You know, and yeah, I like Tubi right now for the past 3, maybe 4 years has been, at least for me, has been my top earning platform by a good margin, by at least 25%. You know, prior to that, it was Amazon, and then, you know, Tubi started like taking off, and like, I mean, it's eclipsed it. I make more off Tubi now than I ever did off Amazon. You know, like it's great. And I have, you know, about 80 films in my library, you know, in different genres, a lot of docs, but, you know, also narratives and horror and, you know, thrillers and different stuff. And, you know, Tubi is where they earn most of their money. Although that said, the fastest growing platform in probably the last 3 years has been YouTube. For features, and I'm starting to see really like it's still like third position for me overall, but it's coming up.
We heard a filmmaker say recently that they made $100,000 on Tubi in 3 days with their film.
I've seen that post. I don't know that filmmaker, and I can't speak to his specific experience. That sounds extreme, and I would also wonder where he got the information. Because I'm not saying that there's not ways to get it, but as far as I know from the distributors I've worked with, you don't get that kind of data, like as far as days. You know, like unless there are some distributors that do, but very few, and I don't know too many that are sharing that. So I'm not saying it's not true, but I don't know for sure. Although it is possible. I know filmmakers that have done it in a month for sure, and I know filmmakers that have done it in a quarter for sure, and I've actually seen, you know, the proof of those things. So that is definitely possible. And 3 days is definitely possible, but I don't know. I would have to see it to believe it.
What kind of movies are doing the best on Tubi right now?
So there's a lot of different things, but like one of the main things that's really doing well is like women in peril, kind of like Lifetime type thrillers, and African American versions of those seem to be the best. Like most of the filmmakers that I know that are doing, those $100,000 months or, $100,000 quarters are Black filmmakers doing these types of movies. And, they're usually budgeted pretty low, well under 50,000, some much under, and they do really well. There's a filmmaker named Lisa Brown, who did a low budget series called, I think, The Dirty D. And I mean, I haven't actually seen the returns, but I've talked to people that have, and I think she's collectively made billions of dollars off these things, and there's others like her. It's not the norm. That's like, people hear numbers like this and they think, oh great, so they're all making, but they're not. There's such a wide variety. There's people making that much, and there's people making $10. So it's like, there's a numbers game component to it, and there is a, luck of the draw, and there's people that just have their marketing on lock. I interviewed a filmmaker on my channel named Devin Bray, who does movies like this, The Women in Peril. They're, African-American Black movies. And he was initially inspired from my channel, talking about Filmhub and indie rights. So yeah, I think he distributes through indie rights. And, he's had movies that have made these kind of numbers and doing very well. But his marketing is incredible. Like, this guy took the stuff that I was talking about and just surpassed me by a mile. Basically, getting into the filmmaking groups. He created his own group. He has a group called Best Tubi Movies, and it has over 500,000 people. It might be way over that now. It was 500 last time I checked. And his posts I've never seen a filmmaker get this kind of interaction. I mean, I'm talking, it's on Facebook, and thousands of comments and shares on single posts. It is incredible. And he even he's rolled it into a marketing business. His son works with him, Devin Bray Jr., and they have this deal, and it's a really good deal. For $200, they will post your poster, make a post in their group and in their page. And depending on the thing, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But with Craving, I gave him a poster for Craving, gave him the money, and I got hundreds of shares and comments, which, I mean, I'm pretty good, and I don't typically get hundreds of shares and comments, maybe 1 out of 10 posts, but that it did really well. And so they've made a sub business on that. And now that you can monetize, your Facebook professionally, and if you get enough interaction, they pay you little bits of money. He's making more money from that. I mean, I don't know exactly how much, but a good amount, a sizable amount.
So these Women in Peril ones, are they films that interest you?
Not, to be honest, no. I like female-led movies. I'm interested in a little harder edge stuff. So I don't necessarily like the Lifetime model. Nothing against it, but for me as an artist, I'm not interested in that. I want to do a horror movie or an action movie or a sci-fi movie or maybe a drama, but I'm not particularly interested in that. If I had something that fit that model, I would do it. I wouldn't do it probably Black-led, because I would feel that would be disingenuine, because I think the other thing for the Black filmmakers that are being really successful with this, I think the common thread on them is the authenticity. Sure. And because they are making movies, about their community or, in an underserved market, and they eat it up, so I think that's great. I don't think it would work for me, but as a Caucasian filmmaker or whatever your background is, what is that for you? What is that market for you? So for me, I found it more in documentaries. I do a lot of Bigfoot documentaries, and I do a specific kind of Bigfoot documentary, and I've found a really strong market for it. So within the Bigfoot realm, there are hundreds of Bigfoot documentaries that are very we're hunting for Bigfoot, there he is, or they're very exploitive, Bigfoot's kidnapping people and he's killing people. I do these very kind of generalized introduction to Bigfoot. This is why people like him. I'm more interested in the people, and so that's my take on that. And I found it's an underserved market. and I've been very successful with it. I haven't done it I haven't found it myself in horror, but there's got to be, a genre mashup or something for an underserved market that's going to do well.
I've watched some of those Women in Peril, and they're actually good, and then they suggest more, so now you've got them playing, and I didn't think I would like them, and I actually found them interesting. So.
Yeah, I like to watch them. Like, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Like, when I say I don't have interest in making them, but I like it's a very entertaining, and a lot of them, like, because a lot of the filmmakers, and I don't mean this disparagingly, but like they're new, they're a little green, so like they have this like raw energy to it. That's just, it's like, like Quentin Tarantino when he made Reservoir Dogs. Like, there's a raw energy to that's missing from almost everything else he did. But it's cool. And I really like, they're a little rough around the edges, some of them, but
yeah.
it also adds to the authenticity.
Yeah.
Like, because you really feel like you're watching this. This is like slice of life. So I think it's awesome. Like, and I'm really, really happy that, such an underserved market has like found its voice, and I get, I don't want to sound like soapbox preaching about it, but I get really like bent out of shape when I hear, like white filmmakers like, well, black filmmakers are making all the money right now, and that's not fair. And I'm like, you just have to find like your thing, and it's different for us now, and we have been oversaturated for 100 years. So let's figure out what is our, where is that underserved market for us, and they do exist. You just got to look a little harder for it.
Are you worried that the success that filmmakers are having with Tubi currently may go away?
Yes, and it will. Like, the one constant in the film business and distribution is whatever is earning the most money now is not going to be in a certain period of time. How long will Tubi last? I have no idea, and I think it's possible that it has already peaked. Like when I look at overall numbers, like I've seen numbers from distributors. We're talking, they distribute 2,000 plus movies, and 5 years ago, there were maybe a dozen or up to 20 movies that were like these doing on Tubi and doing six figures. It's maybe up to 25. That might be high, something like that. Today, I think you would probably find less than half a dozen. In this particular sample size. Doesn't mean there's not others, and there might be bigger samples out there, but like I kind of feel like the bubble probably already have passed the peak. It's definitely hasn't gone away yet. I don't see it going away anytime soon, but you never know. Like, I mean, look what happened to Amazon. Like they, especially for documentaries, they straight up took them away. Like, you couldn't submit documentaries to Amazon for a couple of years. They brought it back, but there was a couple of years you couldn't. And to this day, it's not super easy to even get on SVOD anymore. Like they pretty much will put almost anything up on transactional, but like a lot of those never get to SVOD. They just don't open it up for them. So that's changed. And, 5 years ago, Amazon was paying, 18 cents an hour or whatever it was. And, now for most people, we're making 1 cent an hour. It's not the base. You can make up to 12, but most of us don't make that. We're doing a penny an hour, for streaming on SVOD there. So, again, has the market like grows as it becomes more saturated, as movies become easier to make, as AI starts coming into it more, and the barrier to entry lowers, the overall value of movies lower, they make a little less. So yeah, the future is always unknown, but at least in filmmaking, there always something else has come along, at least up till now. Everybody said, when VHS came out, it's going to kill theatrical. And then, when DVD came out, it's going to kill independent film. And then when streaming came, it's going to kill independent film. And in my opinion, independent film's golden age has been in the earlier years of streaming. We might be a little past that now, but like it was golden for, between 2015 and, maybe 21. But who knows what's going to be next. And even within that streaming bubble, it was like, at first, like transactional was the thing. You were making money on transactional. The SVOD or AVOD stuff either didn't exist or just you didn't make anything from it. And then all of a sudden, like Amazon Prime Video Direct came around, and then SVOD was the thing, and people were making tons of money on SVOD. And then, that started paying less and less. And then all of a sudden AVOD starts coming up. And then about a year ago, really, and this is for me, this might not be a general thing, but within my 80 film library, I found transactionals actually come back up. I made a documentary about 6 months ago, maybe 7 months, called Bigfoot Beyond the Legend. And it's a cheap Bigfoot documentary. It's basically, and there's a new thing I was trying, so, it's me, like talking to camera with B-roll over me, and then I intersperse it with some interviews from like leftover stuff from other Bigfoot docs I'd done. And I put it out thinking, maybe you do a couple $100 a month, and in its first 3 months, the movie made like $22,000. And almost all of that was on Amazon transactional, like rentals, purchases, and then it hit Tubi, and it's making a few thousand a month on Tubi, but nothing close to what that transactional is. But again, that's just one example. And generally speaking, most people are still making more on AVOD, but what I'm saying is it changes. So whatever it is today, it'll be something different tomorrow.
I believe you've said when you're marketing a film, you're marketing more than just the film?
Yes. Yeah, many times. So, and again, when I say stuff like this, when I say it's important to build your own brand as a filmmaker and not just market the film, market yourself, I'm not saying that you can't just focus on the film. I don't. And I've found, at least for me, this has been very advantageous. And I think in this day and age, more filmmakers need to take this approach, because I think, I don't want to say toxic, but I think a negative attitude, or it's become a negative attitude, is this: I just want to make the movie and it's going to speak for itself, And I don't mean that's necessarily a bad, or a negative state of mind, but it's having a negative effect on your career, because you are leaving so many opportunities on the table. So now when I market a film, yes, I am out front there, and I try to equate my marketing to, like, if I'm doing the Bigfoot thing, I'm like, hey, this is a Bigfoot documentary I made and why it's important to me, or an anecdote, personal, how it made me feel, or why I did it, or something beyond, this is my movie, go see it. This is my Bigfoot movie. This is what it's about. Here's the trailer. Go see it. Like that, that's cold. That's impersonal. And in this day and age, with so many people out there trying to promote, you have to connect to your audience. You have to give them, a reason to watch like this thing, because there's 100 others just like it. Like, why watch this? Why listen to you? So you try, and I know it sounds egotistical, but you make it a little bit about you, or how it relates to you, or your journey, and I think that is essential. And doing like the filmmaking videos, and I'm not saying every filmmaker needs to go out and start a YouTube channel. You don't necessarily need to do that, but like doing that has helped me in so many different ways when it comes to marketing. I think I mentioned it before, it taught me to be more confident on camera. It taught me to be a little more confident in saying, yeah, you should watch this movie, and not being just self-deprecating and just like, well, here's my movie, maybe you'll like it. Who wants to see that, and I try to be, very, humble about it, and, genuine. And I think that translates when the marketing works and is successful.
Right. And sometimes, there's nothing wrong with, spreading your feathers and wanting to be bold. And, there's sometimes people tend to play it too safe or too small.
Yes.
So, and I think if we've been conditioned that way, we feel like, oh, I'm being such a narcissist and so egotistical right now. But sometimes those people really succeed, and you got to kind of emulate that at times.
Yeah, well, there's an old adage, and it's, I am from the working class. I am, I'm Gen X. I just turned 50. Like, I am from the, like, just keep your nose down, do hard work, whether it's in regular work, jobs, or, doing films, whatever it is. Just, keep your nose down. Don't make a fuss. I heard it on a podcast, another, like a famous filmmaker was talking about it. And they were talking about, because they were a Stack Shepherd, and he's like from Detroit. And he was talking about how when he started getting success, like, he had this like almost chip on his shoulder because, it's like, oh, who are you? You think you're big time now. And, and I understand that, like that is a legitimate emotion, and there's nothing wrong with feeling that. But if you want to be a successful independent filmmaker, like you have to navigate that a little bit. There's a medium ground. You don't have to be like look at me, look at how great I am. Like, that's not what it's about. It's about, like, here's a thing that I made that makes me feel this way, and I think it's going to make you feel that way, or whatever it is. I'm sounding touchy-feely with it. It can be more, like, here's a thing, it's really cool, this is why it's cool, this is why I think you'll like it, this is why I like it. And that's, like, one filmmaker that I think is really, really good at the entrepreneurial thing, like Kevin Smith. And I'll be straight up honest. I liked his first movies, and I kind of don't much care for anything after that. Every now and then, like, I liked Red State, but for the most part, as a filmmaker, I don't follow him anymore. But as a person, as a personality, I watch everything he does. I watch his podcasts. When he does, if I can go to one of his live shows, I'll go to it. I don't necessarily, I don't think I've watched probably his last 3 movies, but I consume his other content. And, I think it's the same thing with me. I have my filmmaking channel. I have a lot of filmmakers that watch my filmmaking channel. They don't watch my movies. They don't care about my movies. There are people that do, but it's not them. And it's not for them. So, like, when I get filmmakers that'll, crap on my stuff, like, I do low budget documentaries. There's a lot of technical flaws in them. And, they'll say, well, this isn't a good movie. You're just throwing out numbers. You're just doing, quantity over quality, And there may be an element of that is true. But it's not just cash grabs. Like, I believe in everything I do. And I also, I think it's really important to love the process and not just the end result. And I'm not trying to just excuse bad work, but you have to love I think you have to love the process first if you're going to be a filmmaker, because the truth is, whether it's creatively or financially, so few films actually come out. Either it's not what you intended, or it is what you intended and it just doesn't make money. And if you are just connected to that end result, whether it's creatively or financially, you're most likely going to be disappointed. But if you love doing it, then it's, it's gravy. You can still, I'm still disappointed when, a movie doesn't come out quite like I wanted it to, or it doesn't, perform financially like I wanted it to. And, I might be a little down on it, but I have that experience of making it, and that, takes me to the next.
Sure, and the process is sometimes not always fun. You got a bad back. You're sitting at the computer for hours editing or whatever. Stuff's not working, but that's part of the process. And not everybody, not everybody wants to be an actor waiting on set, waiting for their, there's different things where once you know what the process is, you go, okay, yeah, actually, I think I like this.
Yeah, exactly, and find where you fit into it. I've spent a lot of time talking about these low budget documentaries, and a lot of filmmakers will watch and say, well, I don't want to do that. And there's nothing wrong with not wanting to do that. If it's not your thing, don't do it. But you can take these general concepts though and apply it to other milieus. It doesn't have to just be this. And it doesn't have to be, I make docs in about a week. It doesn't necessarily have to be a week for you. It might be a few months for you, or a short period of time for you might be 6 months, and that's fine too. But I think the most important thing is just to keep, I say on my channel, just keep making movies, you keep creating, however long it's taking you to finish them. But you have to, on some level, you have to find something in the doing of it that sets you on fire. Otherwise, you're in for heartache, because independent film is tough, both on the creative, production and on the business. And, it gets tougher,
And then with your, how many Facebook groups do you have? Just one or?
I just one.
Just one,
yeah. There were times I think when I had more. I mean, just one for the filmmaking. Like
Right.
And I used to do one for every movie I made, and it's just every time you got to make it, you got to start over, you got to build it up. So now what I do is, I have two groups, and because like I said, I do a movie once every other year. So I'll take that exact group, I will rename it. It'll be the next movie.
Oh, okay.
So like
go.
I still have a Craving group and a Hard Place group. When I get ready to do the next movie, the Craving group will disappear.
Oh.
Because after a certain point, like a year or so, the group's is not getting you anything. It's new stuff that feeds those groups.
Sure.
At least in my experience.
What are the first things filmmakers need to know about getting people to watch their movie?
First thing, that not everybody's going to be interested in what you are interested in. And just because you make the movie doesn't mean that people are automatically interested in it. Like, you have to kind of put yourself in an audience mindset. And a lot of times the audience might be you. Like, you're making it for other people like you. But look at it like, try to look at it from the outside, even if it is for you. Like, try to look at it like, and I think writing's the same thing. When you're writing, like, when I write now, I try to think in the third person. Like, I try to think like, how is this playing to someone that's never seen it before? And I do think that translates, because I think one of the major things about having a successful film is connecting with an audience. And again, this sounds kind of robotic, but it's retention. Like, getting an audience in is half the battle. You have to keep them in, and you have to keep them in for a certain amount of time. Especially that's what streaming is all about. It is about getting the click on and then keeping it there for enough time that it registers, because if you don't, those algorithms hate you, and they won't show it to more people. So it's the first thing you need to do is you're not making it just for you. Stop thinking about it like just for you or just your expression. I'm not saying not to look at it like that way, but that's the other thing. A movie can be two things. It can be for other people, and it can still be a pure expression for you. It's not a binary or a non-binary situation. It can be both. There's no, just because I say, you need to make this for the audience first, doesn't mean it can't be equal with you. Both of those things can exist. But if you want to make money with the movies, the audience thing has to exist.
Sure, and just to take your channel, you are interested in marketing and distribution and
Yes.
and film, so that lends itself to then being credible on camera and people wanting to listen to you. If it was something that you didn't really care about, just creating the channel for that, who knows if it would be as successful.
I think you're absolutely right. I think it's essential. So if you are going to go down the path and you want to create a filmmaking YouTube channel, don't just look at what you think people are going to want to know. Like, what part of it speaks to you? What part of it do you really have something to say? Like, when I looked at other filmmaking channels, I felt like I had something unique to say about distribution and marketing, and at a certain level. Because most filmmaking channels, they tend to talk about filmmaking in very broad terms. This is what a film is, and they're talking about, from studio to independent. So I get a lot of pushback from filmmakers sometimes. They'll be like, well, David Lynch does this, or, Quentin Tarantino does this, or, Christopher Nolan did this. And that's not what I'm talking about here. I'll be straight honest. I'm most likely never, ever going to get to that level. I will probably die making, up to $500,000 movies, and that's what I'll make. And I am at peace with that. There was a time when I was doing it to get to bigger things. But now, I like the creating of it. I like what I'm doing. I like what I make. But if that's not you, don't listen to what I'm saying. Because what I'm, a lot of the stuff I'm saying, it won't work for that $1 million movie. It won't work maybe for even that $500,000 movie. But if you're making $50,000 movies or 25 or 100, that's where I live. And I do have valid, life experience doing that.
Well, I think you've said that there are people in PR, and I don't know if you want to talk about this,
Sure.
that say your marketing advice is incorrect.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, and in distribution too, there are distributors, there are PR things, and I haven't seen a lot of it like publicly. Like sometimes they'll comment on a post and like, oh, this is like totally wrong. And the thing is like they're not wrong. Like they're not right either. They're actually like, I know, and this sounds very like hippy dippy, but there is no right and wrong. There's just different approaches. And what they're talking about usually is more tunnel vision. They're talking about a specific level of movie or a specific type of movie, and this is what works for that. And if we are in the same milieu, you got to remember, a distributor, a PR person, they have a vested interest in their point of view being correct. I mean? Like I know a distributor, which I won't name, that just hates Filmhub. And I know actually several distributors that hate Filmhub, and they will just talk, oh, it's going to collapse, all these filmmakers are going to lose money, it's horrible. They have a vested interest in that happening because Filmhub is taking away business from them. I personally like Filmhub a lot, but and they're not wrong. Like a lot of the stuff they say, like in a macro level, is true, but for a certain segment of films, like Filmhub is great. Like the documentaries that I make, a lot of those traditional distributors wouldn't touch them. They're niche, they're small, and I don't like to get into good bad terms, but even like indie rights, who I work with a lot, there's a lot of docs I make that they wouldn't take. Like the one that just made 30 grand, I did not submit it to them, but I would make $1,000 bet they would have turned it down. And it made $30,000 through Filmhub. So for that, it's great. Now, if that movie had been $500,000 and had a famous narrator and was, I took 2 years to make it, maybe Filmhub's not the best place for it.
Jay, what's the cheapest documentary you've ever made?
I want to say, free, no money, but there's no such thing as a free documentary. It costs, your time's worth this. You had to pay for the equipment, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, there's a lot of them, a good number of them, that I don't put anything financially into them other than what I already have in my time. So I own 2 cameras. I have a small Sony that I did interviews on for a long time, and now I have a Blackmagic 6K Cinema that I do interviews on, and my shooting partner in California has a Blackmagic 6K that he shoots on. I have my own sound gear, so I do it all. I have a ongoing subscription to Storyblocks for my supplemental B-roll, and then whatever B-roll I shoot on set. And then occasionally, I take kind of a journalistic approach with documentaries where I typically don't pay for interviews. Now occasionally, depending on the person or their status within that genre, I may pay a few $100s or $1,000 for an interview, but very rarely. Most of the time I don't. So it's just maybe a little travel, and that's about it for the most part.
And for sound, what do you use?
I have an Audio-Technica shotgun mic. I think it costs like maybe $120. And then I have a set of Sennheiser lavs and a Zoom H6 or H4, sorry. And I'll use that.
How do you write your documentary scripts?
So I don't really write them in a traditional sense. Like I don't do a lot of pre-structuring of my documentaries. I've started to kind of experiment with that a little more as I'm doing more, like inserting myself into them and writing more voiceover and those parts. So that has become a little more of a thing. But for the most part, I pick a subject, I write, the same questions usually for most of the interviews, usually around 25, and I usually only get to maybe 6 of the questions. Because the way I usually take it is I let the questions lead to other questions. And so sometimes it becomes something totally different than I even anticipated. And then one of my strengths has an editor. I mean, I've directed forever, but for a good chunk of my career, I was making most of my living, at least freelance-wise, as an editor. So like I'm pretty good at taking, these interviews and shaping it into a narrative like fairly quickly. And like that's how I approach it. And there's not a right and wrong way. There's people that totally structure their stuff out and they plan it and great. I personally don't. I just, like I do the interviews. I let the interview lead me where, the documentary takes.
What elements do your low-budget documentaries have to have?
So the main thing that's important to me when I'm approaching a documentary is I want to be talking to people that are passionate about their subject. To be honest, I don't really care too much what the subject is. I mean, I want to be slightly interested in it, but I don't need to know anything about it. For me, it's about the people. So I need to connect with them personally on some level. So that's important to me, and it's also important to me. I don't like to do exploitive things. I don't like to ambush people or be antagonistic. I also, and this in some ways this is a flaw of mine. I'm conflict averse. So I won't do the kind of interviews where I'm like pushing for something or trying to provoke a negative emotional reaction. So it's mostly, it just has to be. It sounds a little hippy-dippy, but I want it to do a positive spin on things, and I do Bigfoot documentaries, but I want it to be informational and fun, and I'm not trying to scare anybody or absolutely prove the existence or disprove the existence. I want it to be entertaining and of value to a certain audience, and even within those audiences, there's going to be segments of them that don't like it. There's a huge segment of the Bigfoot community that hates my stuff because I'm not presenting new evidence. I'm not, going out there and, doing what they call the work, searching for Bigfoot. I don't care about that. I don't care if Bigfoot does exist. I'm interested in the people. And I like that. And there's other people that do. There's a niche audience for it. And like I said, I do a lot of introductory into things. So for a lot of Bigfoot people, they know all this introductory stuff. So it's just repeated information for them. So they're like, you're just repeating all this information. You're not adding anything new to it. And I was like, there's a ton of people that don't know this, and it's for them. It's not for you. And that's I approach. If I do a MMA documentary or a documentary on fighting, we did one with an MMA fighter, a boxer, and a pro wrestler. And it was about, for the general public, this is what these people's lives are. For Uber fans, they're going to know all that stuff and it's repeated information. But there's other people that really get something out of those. And I like that.
Yeah, we talked off camera about how sometimes the fan of something is more interesting than the subject of what you're covering. Yeah,
I find in most of the documentaries I've done, the people are way more interesting than the actual subject, But then there's others, like we just did a series of diet documentaries, and I am super interested in that. I just turned 50. I'm really, I want to be healthy into my 70s and whatnot. So I am interested. I want to hear what the experts say, and I find that fascinating.
Why do you think you make more money off of your documentary films than you do of your narrative films?
So I said that, but it's not. I don't necessarily individually. The documentaries don't make more money than the narratives. I mean, individually, one-to-one, narratives make more, exponentially more. The reason that I make more money off documentaries collectively is because I have more of them, and at least for me, I can make a documentary in a week, and I mean, from shooting to post, I can do it. And I am happy with that quality. And for me, it's good. It's good enough. It's serving its purpose. It's giving the audience what they need. And I'm not saying that you can't do that with a narrative. There are people that do. I used to do it back in the day, but I've hit a point where, at least with narratives, I'm not happy taking that approach anymore. So for me, a narrative, I have to have a certain amount of days to shoot it. I have to have a certain amount of time to edit it. So I tend to, have a year and a half between narrative features now, because that's how long I want to spend on it. The documentaries I can do faster. So I have more of them, so they make up more of my income.
Well, you've said on your Jay Horton YouTube channel that the documentaries, even though you love them, that's your work, that's your bread and butter.
Yes.
That's kind of your 9 to 5, and then the narrative is something that you take more time with. That's kind of what you aspire to do more. So
yeah, absolutely. The narratives, literally, the documentaries have become my 9 to 5. Like, in between features, I wrapped A Hard Place. Well, we shot in February. We shot for, I think, 12 days in February. And then we had 2 months off and then had to shoot pickups in LA. And during those 2 months, I was editing A Hard Place. I spent that whole time. And then we shot the pickups. And then I finished editing on Hard Place. And then I turned it over to composer, VFX, score. And then while they're working on that, which is, a month to two period, I start cranking out documentaries again. So I'm doing them really fast. So I've made 3 or 4, in the month that I've given over the post of A Hard Place. And then that'll come back to me. I'll work on Hard Place for another month, and then that'll be done and, ready to be delivered. And then I'll go back and I'll do documentaries for another 3-4 months. And then like early next year, we'll be starting to either raise money for or shoot the next movie.
And how many Bigfoot documentaries do you have?
I don't know off the top of my head. Probably 6 or 8. Yeah, I mean, I've done a few, and overall, and the other thing I want people to take away from this, like if I say that I make the most money off Bigfoot documentaries, doesn't mean everyone will. It'll be something different for you. For me, the Bigfoot cryptid documentaries have been the most financially viable on a consistent level. There's others that have peaked up and stuff, but for the most part, those have been pretty much the big earners.
What final advice do you have for any independent filmmakers who want to start making documentaries on a lower budget? And maybe define what that budget is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So for anybody that wants to do documentaries on a low budget, and this advice kind of goes for narratives too, you have to do them for absolutely as cheap as possible. But I think I've talked about the cheap a lot. So my main piece of advice would be, when you're making independent films, like a superpower of mine is I know when to walk away. Like and by walk away, I know when, okay, this is good enough, or this is as good as it's gonna get. I'm okay with this. I'm okay with where it is and put it out. Because you can indefinitely edit or work on a thing forever. You could, and I have. But if you're gonna make do kind of the day job, crank them out thing, you have to treat it like that. You got to treat it a little bit like an assembly line. I know that sounds cold and impractical, but you got to think about it like that. And you got to be like, the main thing with really low budget movies, whether they're narratives or documentaries, your odds are you're not going to make a ton off them. There's a lot of these. Like, if you took my 60 documentaries, added them up, and divided them by the number of months they've been out, I would bet I'd probably have a mean average of something like $200 a month, like on average on a doc, which sounds not good, So, but you have to look at it then. If you have a thing that's only going to make $200 a month, so over the course of a year, it's going to make $2,000, something like that, a little more. So like, you got to look at it like, this is going to make $2,000 in a year. What does $2,000 of my time look like? And sometimes, it's a couple of days for me anyway. So like, that is the way I approach it. I approach it mathematically.
What is Filmhub?
Filmhub is a distribution platform. At least that's how they describe themselves. When Filmhub first started, they called themselves I don't even remember how they referred to themselves, but basically, okay, brass tacks, like real talk, they're an aggregator. They call themselves a distribution platform, but it's an aggregator. They are, you're uploading a movie to them and they are submitting it to platforms. And then they are taking a % off the back end and they're giving you the rest. What makes Filmhub unique, and as far as I know, really the first of its kind like this, is, at least initially, and we'll get into some of the new costs later, but at least initially there's absolutely no cost. Like, you upload it, you don't pay for anything, they submit it, they do all the legwork, they take their 20% and they pay you when it comes in. And that was that. And so, and a lot of people would say, well, there's other aggregators that were doing that, but Filmhub took this tech, like an algorithm-based tech, and they created a website where you could upload it yourself. You don't have to deal with like sales reps, like it's all like kind of automated. So like they can deal with a huge volume of films. And they have connections to platforms that filmmakers can't do themselves, like Tubi, you know. And now people will say, well, you can do Amazon yourself. And yeah, you can. But like Amazon's gotten way more selective with stuff. And even me, like even on some of my higher quality stuff, I'm like it's a risk to do, or it's more of a risk to upload to Amazon yourself on whether or not they'll take it or not. You're a little more likely, not 100% likely, but you're a little more likely it's going to get up if you go through Filmhub. So I tend to I give up that 20% to lessen the risk that it won't get up, you know. But so there's that, and it's all automated, you know. And then they're giving you analytics, which are not quite real time. Their analytics are at the mercy of the platforms. So whatever the platforms are reporting, or when they're reporting, Filmhub is reporting. And where filmmakers get really confused is Filmhub has this thing. They have your projected earnings, and then they have your actual earnings. So like a platform like Amazon will say, hey, this month your movie made $100, right? And that is technically projected earnings because it hasn't settled. Like, because there'll be like either, you know, like a missed thing in the algorithm, or there'll be returns, you know, it's like if it's transactional, like it's not the actual number. It's most likely pretty close, but it's not the actual number. So if, like on Filmhub, they have this little graph, and you know, the one graph is projected earnings and then one's actual earnings. And the actual earnings don't come in until you actually get paid. But you kind of know, like ballpark, what those numbers are going to be on sometimes a monthly basis, sometimes a weekly basis, sometimes a bi-weekly basis, depending on the platform. Like Tubi, or at least they tend to report Tubi about once a week, and that typically happens on Wednesdays. But like occasionally it might be till Thursday or Friday before it comes out, or there'll be a bug in the system and maybe it won't even come out that week at all, you know, and then it'll come out the next week. And you know, and that can be irritating. But what filmmakers need to remember is like, nobody ever reported stuff like this before, you know. And then the cool, you know, distributors back in the day, you know, they'll pay you quarterly, and that's usually like a quarter back. So like 6 months from when the money was actually made or reported, like you'll see it 6 months later, you know. And you won't even know what that amount is until you get like this really generalized report from a distributor that'll say like US streaming and a number, but you won't know what platforms, or you know, all of that. And then, but Filmhub made this much on Amazon, made this much on Tubi, made this much on YouTube, whatever. And nobody had done that before, and that was really exciting, like really exciting. And it democratized distribution. Now, that's a double-edged sword. On one hand, it's really cool that, you know, almost anybody can upload and get a movie and get them onto Tubi, but at the same time, everybody can upload and get a movie onto Tubi. So it has created a glut of content in the marketplace. And I'm not saying this is just Filmhub. This was something that was going to happen whether Filmhub was around or not. But like, the reason I really like Filmhub is they've created this business, they've helped to support this business model that you know, makes me 6 figures a year. You know, I make these like small niche documentaries, and you know, I mentioned earlier, I can't remember if it was off camera or not, but we were talking about how a lot of distributors, traditional distributors, they wouldn't take these movies. You know, like they'll never get to Tubi. Like the only places I could distribute them would be like YouTube and, you know, maybe Prime Video Direct. And for a long time, Prime Video Direct wouldn't take them, and still might reject them because a lot of them are, you know, they're low budget. You know, so Filmhub has made it to where I can make these things and they can find an audience, and I can make a living off these little things. And that market did not exist for me prior to Filmhub. So for that, I will always love them. Now, there are things that have happened that a lot of filmmakers don't like. So, like I said, when they first started, there was absolutely no upfront costs, and there still aren't. There's no money to upload or anything like that. But now there got to be a lot of pushback before they created this rule. Like filmmakers would get mad. Like Filmhub has a YouTube channel called Stash TV, and they would, you know, put movies on their YouTube channel. And initially, that YouTube channel was not monetized. You know, so like you had to kind of wait for it to get monetized to see anything from it. So filmmakers were mad that their movie was on a free thing, not earning them any money. You know, so Filmhub and complained about it. And Filmhub and filmmakers started in droves, you know, I don't want my movie on this channel, like remove it. And so they did. And this isn't just Stash TV too, because Filmhub has like, I don't know, 300 platforms there, 200, something like that they submit to. And some filmmakers are like, well, I never heard of this, you know, rinky-dink Roku channel. I don't want it on there. And, I mean, I personally think that's silly, but you know, whatever, if you don't want your movie there, you don't want it there. So they would have them take it down. Now, Filmhub is dealing with over 15,000 different filmmakers with multiple projects. And it is not this big, you know, corporation. It's still kind of a mom and pop shop. You know, like they have workers and stuff, but it's not huge. So every time they have to issue a takedown or they have to, you know, like change the artwork, or, you know, like filmmakers want to, oh, I want to change my synopsis now. I want to change my poster. And these are all valid things, but you got to understand it's taking up man hours for them. You know, so now what they have done is they've created tiers where if you want to block a channel from, like, Filmhub can't put the movie up there, you have to pay them like an ongoing subscription to block that channel. So if you don't want your movie on Stash TV on YouTube, you have to pay like I think it's $99 a month. And you have to continually pay that. If you don't pay it, the block goes. And I totally 100% understand why certain filmmakers will not want to do that and won't want their movies on YouTube. And I get it, there's nothing wrong with that. But it's become a necessity from Filmhub's perspective to do this because they were drowning in man hours from all of the back and forth. At least that's my understanding of it. Now, for me and what I do, I don't think on smaller independent films, generally speaking, I don't think the cross-collateralization hurts. I don't think having your movie on YouTube and having your movie on Tubi and Amazon all at the same time, I don't think it hurts it. I'm not saying that windowing isn't right for certain movies. It absolutely is. And if yours is one of them, Filmhub might not be for you. So like the documentary that I was talking about a little bit earlier, it made $22,000 in 3 months, and it made that money on Amazon, but on transactional Amazon. But at that exact same time, it was free on YouTube through more than one channel, because, you know, I had it on my own channel, and then, you know, Filmhub had threw it on, you know, Stash or maybe YouTube Movies and something, I can't remember. But it was on all these things free and still made the money on transactional, which just goes to show you. And yes, this was my example, you know, and it might be a unique example, but I don't believe so. I have 80 films in my library, and I've seen this pattern repeat itself over and over. Generally speaking, on much smaller movies, it is not going to hurt you to be on a free platform and be on a transactional at the same time. It's not going to hurt it, like in general. Now, you know, somebody's going to hear me say that, then they're going to go do it. Their movie's not going to make any money on transactional, and they're going to say, oh, it's because it was on YouTube. And maybe that's true, but it's probably not. You know, because again, in general, most independent films don't make much money. And filmmakers are looking for something to blame, other than like the movie just didn't hit. You know, and 9 times out of 10 is the movie just didn't hit. It's not because Filmhub threw it on Stash TV. But that's my opinion.
What should filmmakers know about the payment schedule from Filmhub?
So with Filmhub payment, people should understand that like Filmhub is not setting these payment schedules. Like the payment schedule is dependent on the platform. And some platforms pay monthly. Some platforms pay bi-monthly, some pay quarterly, some pay bi-yearly, you know, all different things. And even within that, so you have a platform and they pay monthly, and say like Amazon. Amazon, I think typically pays around the 28th of the month, but it doesn't always happen like that. Not even through Prime Video Direct, which you're going direct to Amazon. Some months, it'll be as late as the 4th or 5th, you know, or it'll be early. You know, so like there's not like a set thing. And it's the reason why for many, many, many years, distributors paid on a quarterly basis or a quarter back. It was so it gave them time to collect all of the straggling money and then give the filmmakers an exact amount on an exact date and, like no problems. What Filmhub has done is like they pay as the platforms pay. Like not quite real time, but close to it. Like they'll collect the money on Monday and you'll get paid for it on like Thursday or something like that. But what can happen then, and filmmakers get really upset about this and start saying they're holding on to my money or they're ripping me off, because like say for 6 months in a row, Tubi paid on the 22nd, and then on the 7th month, it doesn't come in until the 28th. Or like maybe it did come on the 22nd, but like something happened at Filmhub, whether it be, an algorithm or a bug thing or, something happened and the money couldn't be accounted for until the following week or whatever it is. But like, you just have to kind of roll with it and understand that up until like Filmhub and some, there are some other distributors that do this, but few. We had to wait sometimes up to 6 months to get paid from when money came in. And now, like we get it when they get it, or, within a reasonable time frame from when they get it. And again, I think that is revolutionized like distribution. And there are other distributors that they're having to follow that because they're going to get left behind. There's distributors now that are starting, or at least thinking about transitioning to like online dashboards where filmmakers can upload their movies directly to them as opposed to mailing in the drives and all of that stuff. Because with Filmhub, it's all electronic. And I like that. But that's how the pay works. Now, Tubi pays monthly, Amazon pays monthly, but it's monthly, but on a 90-day delay, because that's how they pay. So if you make $100 in January, that money's not going to be paid till January, February, end of March. You know what I mean? And then monthly after that, but it's always 3 months back. So, and one other thing about that is filmmakers will get confused because they say, hey, it pays monthly. And then they're like, hey, and they just put a movie up and it's their first movie. And the movie made $2,000 in January. Where's my money? They don't pay actually until March, the platform, not Filmhub. When Filmhub gets the money, they'll pay you. Anyway.
Can you talk a little bit about quality control and the difference between submitting your film and uploading it to Filmhub as opposed to uploading it straight to YouTube?
Okay, so they do have a quality control system, and I believe it's a mix of human and auto. I think things go through an auto thing first, and if things are flagged, it fails, and then you have to fix it, and then maybe final thing is a human review. At least that's what I understand. I have never actually talked to them about their QC process, but it is different from YouTube. Not everything's going to make it. There are some technical standards. Like you can't have audio dropouts, and then there are a few like weird streaming rules, like Amazon, for example, and maybe Tubi's the same, I don't know, but I think this rule was established because of Amazon. Amazon doesn't want URLs in the movie. So like if you're doing a documentary and somebody talks about a website, sometimes that can flag it, even verbally. Like can flag it. I'm not saying it always does, but it can. But you're not supposed to like visually have like if you have a lower third and it has somebody's website, because they look at it as a third-party advertisement. So like that's kind of a rule. So I had a couple documentaries that failed because of that, and I basically just had to cut those things out or not have them in the movie. End scrolls can't have opening credits. You can't have like additional scenes after the movie's over. Like you can do like a post-credit scene usually, but sometimes the auto system might flag it. So like I don't really do post-credit scenes unless it's really important to me that it's in there, and then I'll let Filmhub know as I'm uploading it that it's there. But it's mostly what most films fail for though is not the film itself, is the art. They have some art standards, and they make you upload 6 different sizes, aspect ratios of posters. So you'll have a regular poster, you'll have a slightly wider version of that, you'll have a landscape, you'll have a really skinny landscape, you'll have a textless landscape. And then there are some rules about the fonts. Like they want the fonts to be readable at a thumbnail size. So one thing I do whenever I do a poster, I shrink it down to little tiny and I make sure I can still clearly read the title. If you cannot, they'll fail it. I had one I thought was pretty readable, but it was a little ornate and it failed. And one other negative about this, which I don't particularly like, I think that they should ask before they do this, or at least tell you, but there are situations now where they will just auto-fix a thing. Like, say your font's not great or not readable, you know, they'll go into Photoshop, they'll remove it, and they'll put a new font on it. Whether you like it or not, it's up there, you know. And so I don't personally like that. They did it to a title of mine, and I hate the font. But at the end of the day, that movie did okay, and because of all the good things that they do, like, I can accept those. Now, there's some filmmakers that won't accept, and if you're listening to this and you don't like them putting movies up on YouTube and that, then do not submit to Filmhub. But if that is okay with you, if you can roll with that, then they can be great.
What do you see as the future of film distribution?
Honestly, and I don't mean to sound like a huge, Filmhub cheerleader, but I do think the future of it is going to be more things like that. Like whether Filmhub, continues or, goes bankrupt or succeeds or fails, I think the future is going to be online, algorithm-based, where you're submitting things just like you do to YouTube. And I do think analytics and stuff are going to get better and better. I think we're probably, I remember talking to someone who was kind of in the know with how Filmhub's algorithm works, and it's something they're working on, quicker reporting. I think we're a year or so out from having more real-time analytics. I think that kind of stuff is coming, and I think there'll be more companies like Filmhub that'll cause more. The problem with Filmhub right now is there's no real competition for them. They are kind of the only game in town. So this $99 tier thing, which a lot of people don't like, and they're absolutely right to not like it, there'll be other competitors. And then stuff like that might start getting cheaper or going away because they have to compete. Right now, they just they can do whatever they want because they are the only game in town. Like I said, I hated the font thing, but I have nowhere else to go with that title. So I got to deal with it. But, a year from now when there's somebody else just like them, man, I'll be like, all right, well, forget you, take it down, go across the street. But that right now that doesn't exist. And a lot of filmmakers don't like that. And I understand.
And you said you're going to be making a video on your channel of the Filmhub dashboard so people can see it?
Yeah, it's something I'm writing right now. Because I had one a few years ago, but the dashboard, everything has changed, so it's not really relevant anymore. So yeah, I was planning on kind of going through the upload process, explaining the reports, and trying to explain the payment schedule, which, to be 100% honest, I don't always get, because it is complicated, because like Tubi, for example, I said they pay 90 days back, but I think it's actually 95 days back, which is a weird odd number. And even if it was just 90 days, it's never going to be the same day of the month, because different months have different amount of days, and if you're paying every 90, that 95 can start moving, forward or back. So if you're getting paid on the 16th regularly, it might be the 14th 3 months from now, or the other way.
If a movie is rated 5 out of 10 on IMDb, will you still watch it?
I don't really look at IMDb ratings as a viewer at all. I just don't. For me, all right, I'm just gonna say it. I don't really watch a lot of lower budget independent films. I watch mine because I make them. But my tastes are, as a viewer, are slightly higher, polished. I don't want to say just studio stuff, but I don't really watch a lot of that. So, and I don't anymore even look at reviews. And it's not because I'm trying to protect myself from spoilers or anything like that. I find more pleasure in coming into a thing that interests me and being into it. So the only time that I pay any kind of attention to reviews, if it's mine or a friend's, then I kind of look at it, or to compare and contrast. If I'm thinking about working with someone, I might take a look at it. It's not a deciding factor for me, but I like to see basically where the general populace might be setting them. But I don't take it as gospel either, because I do understand there are review bombing. I've been review bombed. It happens. So, I had, Craving, it got hit pretty bad, maybe 2 months into its release. I forget what platform it was, but, it went from I think it had like a 7, like a 7.1 or something like that. And like, you know, it dropped to like a 4, like almost overnight. And I was like, there's no way that many viewers actually watched it that night, but whatever. I just kind of, it doesn't affect me that much anymore. I'm not saying not at all, but not much.
You're talking about IMDb? Your Craving was review bombed?
Yeah, my Craving was review bombed on IMDb. Yes.
Okay.
I've seen it happen on Amazon as well, you know, but IMDb is because there's no barrier to reporting, so you're more likely to get review bombed. And I have, you know, it sucks, but there's filmmakers out there that don't like me, you know, either because of something I said on my channel or, you know, out of, you know, envy or, you know, whatever it is, and will go on like, I don't like him. He said this on Film Courage's interview, so I'm going to give his movie a 1. You know, it does happen, you know, but so I try not to let it affect me.
Sure. Oh yeah. No, that's not fun. What do you think of independent filmmakers being judged by their ratings in light of knowing that there are people who manipulate reviews and scores either way, high or low?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I think it sucks. I think review manipulation both ways is not a good thing. But you know, it's the world we live in. I kind of look at it the same way as I look at piracy now. Is it's something that's there, and I can't really do anything about, and I just try not to think about it. You know.
What is one of the highest rated independent movies you can think of on IMDb?
Oh, like a small independent movie. We're not talking about famous ones,
right?
I think most people that are making movies around like my level, where you're making them for $250,000 or and under, I think it's very rare to see one of them stay above like a 5 or a 6. Very rare, because and I don't think that's all just like review bombing or haters or whatnot. And there's a huge section of the population that this is not the target audience. They want, like me, I mean, to be honest with you, I watch more polished, you know, like higher budget stuff in general. That's what I watch. You know, so a lot of people will see something like my movie Craving that was made for, you know, a little less than $100,000, and they're like, well, like, you know, like you can see the crack in the monster suit, or, you know, maybe, you know, there's a piece of sound that's not great, or maybe a performance was a little off, you know, because when you're on a low budget, it's not that the actors aren't good, but you know, it can be a thing of time, or it can be a thing of pressure, or it can, you know, whatever it is. And that just happens more exponentially on lower budget films. So a lower budget film is going to be seen by Joe Schmo in Indiana that is expecting, you know, Schindler's List, and they get, a $50,000 version of it, and don't, you know, they don't make allowance for that. So, you know, the movies are going to be lower rated in general.
Have you found similar things on Rotten Tomatoes or Letterboxd?
So I don't really, I don't look at Rotten Tomatoes. I never have. And then Letterboxd, the only time I ever even go on there is if I'm going to add a movie of mine. So I don't spend a lot of time on it. But I feel the same way pretty much.
Yeah.
But
I like to be surprised too. Sorry.
Yeah, me too. And I think I think Letterboxd in general, I think there's a little more like general acceptance for lower budget stuff than say IMDb or Rotten Tomatoes. Anywhere where you have less, I don't want to use the word normies, but where you have like normal people congregating, you're going to have lower ratings for lower budgeted films.
Sure. Those normies ruin everything, don't they? Do you think IMDb should do away with their 10-star rating system?
I honestly, I don't know what IMDb should do with their rating system. I don't think it works at all. But I don't know. I don't know. I personally have gotten to a point where I just don't care about the IMDb rating, so it's not something I think about too much. But I mean, the whole Rotten Tomatoes, IMDb, I think it's all completely flawed and a messed up system. And I don't think it's not fair on any level, whether it's, you know, fake positive or fake negative. I mean, look at, The Boys, that just got like completely review bombed for like being too woke or something. And like that sucks. But then on the same hand, you have studios, you know, paying for, positive or influencing, positive reviews on IMDb or Rotten Tomatoes, and that sucks too. So I personally, I wouldn't be upset if it went away.
Have you ever experienced piracy and then seen those effects on IMDb?
Yes. So that is so most of the time my take on piracy is I don't think it affects independent films that much. I don't think people that pirate really buy anyway, but where it can affect it is definitely on IMDb. So like I forget what movie it was, maybe it was Campus. Several years ago, I put it out, and it had a decent rating on IMDb, and then it hit pirate sites, and within 24 hours, it was down to like a 3. Like it went from, I don't know, like a 6 or something down to a 3. So yeah, it definitely can.
What's your advice to new filmmakers who are afraid that their movies will be downvoted, review bombed, whatever it is, on IMDb?
So again, it's like you have to kind of take a Zen approach to it. What will be, and it's going to happen. Like piracy is going to happen, review bombing stuff is going to happen, and you have to just let it go, because there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. They have takedown services that you can hire to take down pirate sites. It's expensive, and in my opinion, is not worth the expense, and it's definitely not worth the aggravation. Like as I get older and older, I try to, like, you control what you can control and let go what you can't, was the AA thing, accept the things you can change and learn to, or change the things you can, learn to accept the things you can't, something like that.
What does being an independent filmmaker mean to you?
I think an independent filmmaker is, in the broad sense, it's just being independent of the studio, which there's such a breadth of different, types of movies that are made that could be considered independent. I usually, and it's semantic, but I usually use the term indie, for indie, for like what I do as opposed to an independent film. I'll say I do indie films because it feels a little like, smaller and personal, because, my narratives now, I'm making them, a little over $100,000, but I think that's minuscule in the grand scheme of things. And I've made them much cheaper, and they're a different level of movie. So to me, that means, making movies, faster, making movies cheaper, making movies like more personal, and owning my movies. I own pretty much everything I make now. And to me, that's what it means to me. It doesn't mean that to everyone, but for me, that's what it is.
How can you dispel the myth that you have to be middle class or upper middle class or have come from that background to be able to make money with film or be in this business and have a job?
I dispel that by, I am the template. Not to, it sounds egotistical, but I am from no money. I am from no connections. I came from Fort Wayne, Indiana, single mom, trailer park, lower middle. We lived very, very, very modestly. And I've never had, someone, no one discovered me. No one said, hey kid, make your movie, I was working part-time at Starbucks. I was making, whatever minimum wage was then, and some in tips, saved some money, and yeah, I got a credit card, and saved money over a year, and got together with another friend, put our money together, and made a little $5,000 movie. And then, sold that, and by sell it, I mean we got it distributed, and then, went from there, and I kept repeating that, and then, I would work for people and, make a little money doing that as a shooter or, later an editor, and I made a pretty decent living as an editor later on. But even to get to the point where I could make money as an editor, I got there making these little $5,000 to, $10,000 movies, and eventually I got to a point, I had a couple under my belt, and I got to a point where I could talk, another indie independent producer into putting $25,000 into a movie, and eventually 50, and then caught the eye of some producers that were making a string of $50,000 movies, and they hired me to direct and edit those. And by the time I got done with those, I have, 15 features under my belt. And so at that point, I have some clout, and I'm making a living, a modest living. And I did it. And then, I went from there to like, I want to just own my movies. I want to make these low budget documentaries. And then, I learned how to market better. And then I started getting to the point where I could crowdfund a movie for $100,000. And, I could go out probably 3 months from now and launch a crowdfunder, decide to do it today, and 3 months from now launch one and raise $150,000 or $200,000. And I came from nowhere and no connections. I built this all up through force of will. I learned how to take what I have and what I earned myself and roll that into a career. And when I really flourished was when I really adopted the cavalry's not coming. Nobody's coming to save me. I'm not going to be discovered. I'm not going to, get picked out of a lottery to direct a Star Wars movie. Like this is my path, and I'm happy with it. Like there was a time I wanted to be, a bigger, like studio director, but now I could live the whole rest of my life making these little movies, and I'm good with that.
With independent film, I think you've said that the time you put in should be proportionate to the money you make back.
Yes, I said that earlier today. I do. Don't get me wrong. So like, I think you can have your cake and eat it too. So, and I do. So for me, when I talk about the, time in, money in, out, like I'm mostly talking about like the documentary stuff that I do. And I look at that stuff, and if I'm going to make, like, on average, if you would add up all of my independent documentaries and divide it and figure out how much you're making a month, it means probably around maybe $200 a month, which sounds really bad. But there's some make 10,000 a month, some make 10 a month. But I have to look at these things, each one of them, like they're going to make that average. So like if I have a movie that's going to make $200 a month for a year, it's going to make $2,000. So is it like, how much time is $2,000 worth, and that might sound a little like mechanical or whatever, but that's kind of how you have to like generally approach it. And then if you have a base where you get enough of that stuff done and you're making some passive income from it, then you can take, a project a year, project every other year, and spend more time on it. And that's what I do with my narratives now. So my narratives feed my like creative, like artistic passion, and the other ones, they feed my bank account and my natural curiosity towards other subjects. That's why I like doing documentaries. And and some people say, well, that's just I don't want to do that. Well, you're doing the same thing if you're working a day job, or if you're being hired. Like personally, I don't like working for people. If you like working for people and, being a director of photography for people, for example, great, man, I wish I did, but I don't. But that's good for you, works for you. For me, I would rather do these documentaries. That's my like DPing, And I kind of have it both ways. I can, do my narratives once every year and a half, spend more money, spend more time, and have the little things to feed me in the meantime.
What's your favorite part about being an independent filmmaker, and what's your least favorite part?
So my favorite part of being an independent filmmaker, like I like being my own boss, and I love taking a thing. Like some people, like they just want to do one part of the process. Like they want to make the movie, or they just want to make the movie and edit it, and that's all they want to do. I like the whole thing. Like I have grown to really like the marketing part of it. I like all of it, and I like having ownership of all of that, both creatively and financially. Like I own, close to 100% of almost everything I do, unless I'm, splitting back end with, shooters or whatever. But I like that, and nobody, as far as work goes, tells me what to do or when to do it or how I want to do it. I mean, if I don't want to make a movie next month, I just don't do it. But if I want to, or if I, had to slow down and I need to make up a little bit, I'll do it. And, I can work in, short bursts, or I can do it long, or, I can do what I want. I can, if I decide to take all of next month off and, go to Cancun, I could do that, and then pick back up when I get back.
And the part you like least?
Oh, the part I like, the part I like least then is, it's also that it's all on your shoulders, so you have to take responsibility for failure. You have to take responsibility, if you are, working with a partner or something and, it financially doesn't work out, you have to take responsibility for that. I've had situations, with investors now where, I start to pay them back out of my pocket if the movie doesn't make money. I don't like that, but I do it. I'd say overall, if I'm like talking about process, I probably enjoy the set itself a lot. Actually, you know what, I like it all. I actually can't think of what I like it all.
Filmmaking is film business?
Yeah, filmmaking is film business. It's 100%. Well, not 100%, but it has to be an equal component or a close to equal component. Like I said, I don't think like the business and the creative has to be mutually exclusive. I think you can do both, and you can have an equal amount of energy or a little more into this or that and still make it work. But if you want to make a living as an independent filmmaker, you absolutely have to put some energy into the business, and it has to be a good amount. Maybe not equal to the creative. I mean, I personally do, but maybe it doesn't have to be. But it has to be something there. You have to put some effort into learning the business side. Even if you're not going to do the marketing yourself or you're hiring somebody, you still should understand basically how it works. You should understand how distribution works. You should understand how the business stuff works so that you don't get taken advantage of, so that people don't rip you off. Understand how it works.
And lastly, though, just one thing when you brought up with that, and that is, what if people say, well, I want to do that, but I'm afraid because people are going to say you're all about the money?
Yeah. So I deal with that on a daily basis during my channels, because my channel is, totally focused on distribution and marketing. And, I'll get that. Well, you're not an artist. You're just a money guy. You're just throwing crap at the wall and trying to make money. And there's going to be people that say that. It's just like creative, like trolls. You're always going to have people that don't like what you're doing, that are triggered by what you were doing, that may be jealous of what you're doing, or think that you were causing their problems by doing this thing, or, whatever it is. So like, I would be lying if I said it didn't affect me, because it does. I mean, I get hurt if somebody makes a trolly comment and says that, because I know in my heart that like I love making movies. Like I love it. And if the movie turns out great, that's great. I want it to turn out good. I want it to be the best thing it can. But if it's not, I love the process. So, I let it go.